Jasmine Crockett calmly laid out a timeline of public records exposing political misconduct. Karoline Leavitt, panicked and called the police. It was supposed to be an ordinary Thursday night panel on government transparency, live from a studio. In Arlington, Texas, 4 lawmakers. 1 moderator, nothing unusual. Jasmine had been invited last minute to replace another Congresswoman. She brought no speech, just a familiar stack of folders, highlighters, and a memory sharp enough to cut through spin. Studio lights hummed overhead. Moderator Paul Linfield, a soft-spoken man in a gray suit with a habit of interrupting women, more than men, gave his usual opener. "We're looking for a lively but respectful conversation tonight." His eyes darted nervously. Jasmine adjusted her mic, glanced at her notes, and looked straight at the camera. "Transparency isn't just a buzzword," she said, voice steady. "It's the contract between a government and its people." Karoline, seated 2 chairs away, sighed loud enough for her mic to catch it. C-SPAN wasn't built for drama, but something had shifted. Jasmine had brought receipts. She began referencing documents, dates, memos, redacted names. All already available in public archives, yet conveniently buried by most media. On March 12th, she said, an internal memo from the Office of Presidential Scheduling Records. A closed-door meeting with 3 unnamed energy executives, none of whom appear on the official White House visitor logs. The timing, she pointed out, lined up exactly with a rollback on federal environmental fines. Karoline leaned forward, voice tight. "Are you implying corruption in the Oval Office?" Jasmine didn't look at her. "I'm reading from public documents, Karoline." The moderator tried to interject, nervous. "Just to clarify, the facts speak for themselves." Karoline's hand twitched. She clenched her fist. Jasmine wasn't raising her voice, wasn't even accusing anyone directly, just connecting dots. Then came the second document. A timeline tying key policy shifts to major campaign donors. Her voice sharpened slightly, just enough to signal what this really was, not speculation, evidence. "You're playing with fire," Karoline muttered. Jasmine finally looked at her. "No, I'm just telling the truth, and if that truth burned something down, maybe it needed to." A long silence followed. 5 seconds of dead air. Viewers across the country leaned closer. The moderator cleared his throat. "Let's take a quick break." The broadcast cut. In the studio, tension exploded. Karoline turned sharply. "You think this is a game? You just outed classified information on live TV." Jasmine's expression didn't shift. "Nothing I said was classified. If you don't believe me, check the Federal Register." Karoline stood up, yanking her earpiece loose. "You'll regret this." Producers stepped in. Interns scrambled to gather Jasmine's documents. One young assistant, visibly shaken, asked if she wanted her papers back. Jasmine shook her head. "Let them read it." Karoline marched to the hallway, already dialing. "Yes, Capitol Police. I need to report a breach of national security." Everything in the studio fell silent. Jasmine watched her go. Is how truth gets treated now. Back home, millions of viewers had no idea what had just unfolded off camera. All they saw was a sudden commercial break. A tire ad. Inside, staffers were rattled. Legal was already on the line with the network. Jasmine stayed seated, eyes distant, calculating what came next. Karoline's voice echoed down the hall. She shared sensitive data. "I don't care if it was technically public." She connected dots that shouldn't have been connected. The operator reportedly asked for the exact law broken. Karoline couldn't answer. She just kept repeating, "Dangerous disclosures and irresponsible conduct." In the studio, the moderator whispered to a producer, "She just made it worse. Way worse." Jasmine finally stood, calm as ever. "Someone call my chief of staff," she said. He'll want to know this is happening. 10 minutes later. Karoline returned, phone clutched like a weapon. You're going to be sorry you ever opened your mouth tonight. Jasmine turned to face her, voice low and sharp. You're going to be sorry you tried to use the police as your personal cleanup crew. Paul stepped in, trying to de-escalate. Ladies, please let's keep things civil. We still have 20 minutes left in the show. Jasmine arched an eyebrow. You think I'm going back on air with someone who just tried to criminalize me for reading public documents? Silence dropped like a curtain. Alondra Greer, the show's nonsense producer, didn't hesitate. We're cutting the rest of the segment. We can't risk another outburst, especially with phones already blowing up. She turned to Jasmine. We'll get someone to walk you to your car. Jasmine let out a small, bitter laugh. Not because it was funny, because it was familiar. Am I the threat now? Or is she? Alondra didn't answer. Jasmine gathered her papers just as her phone buzzed. 'Twas her chief of staff, Noel Reyes. He'd already heard Capitol Police were making routine inquiries after Karoline's report. They're going to want a written statement within 48 hours, he said. I didn't say anything that's not already public record, she replied. Let them dig. It's all there. Noel's voice was calm but firm. That won't matter. What matters is that you embarrassed the wrong people. Outside, the air was thick and warm. A few reporters had gathered near the parking lot. Word was spreading faster than anyone anticipated. A junior reporter from the local ABC affiliate was live streaming, saying he was still trying to confirm what exactly had triggered the segment to shut down. Jasmine said nothing. She walked past them, climbed into the back seat of her car, and shut the door. Her phone buzzed again. Noel, we need to get ahead of this before they start spinning it. Her reply, too late. They already are. The car pulled away, studio lights fading behind her. Inside, Karoline was probably still pacing, prepping statements, booking appearances, weaponizing spin. Jasmine wasn't angry. Not yet. She was calculating. If they were going to try to corner her, they'd better be sure no one was filming. But they were. Within hours, the footage had gone viral. A freelance producer had captured the live feed on her laptop before the network could scrub it. The clip showed Jasmine calmly referencing the memo about energy executives. Karoline's face, twisting the interruption, the accusation, and the abrupt cut to commercial. It hit Twitter first, then TikTok, then the news cycle. Cable outlets blurred parts of the transcript out of caution, but it didn't matter. The public wanted answers. Why did the segment end without warning? What was Jasmine exposing? And why had Karoline called the police? By midnight, the hashtag she read documents was trending. Meanwhile, in D.C., the situation was escalating in quieter, more serious ways. Capitol Police contacted Jasmine's office just before midnight, requesting a voluntary interview regarding a possible security breach on live television. She wasn't shaken, but she was furious. On speakerphone, Noel paced her living room. It's procedural. They have to look into it when someone like Leavitt drops the phrase, national security breach. Jasmine sat on her couch, laptop open, watching the clip again and again. I quoted documents from congressional records, verbatim. Doesn't matter, Noel said. They either want to scare you or turn you into a warning for others. Either way, you're a target now. More media requests came in. MSNBC. CNN, she declined them all. She wasn't ready to speak, not yet. Not until she knew exactly what Karoline's angle was. Karoline had already gone public with a dramatic statement. She accused Jasmine of exploiting public trust, referencing documents without full classified context, and jeopardizing national security. There was no evidence. Just fear-mongering wrapped in buzzwords. But Karoline underestimated how many reporters actually licked Chuck. By sunrise, two respected political journalists, Salison Baird of Politico and Marcus Lynn from Reuters, had independently verified every document Jasmine cited. During the show, the network aired side-by-side receipts. Jasmine's quotes matched directly with the documents she referenced. Page numbers, source titles, public access, dates, everything lined up. Nothing had been leaked, and none of it was classified. The truth wasn't flashy, but it was airtight. Noel sent those fact checks to every major media outlet. Let them know it came straight from the source. He texted Jasmine. Her reply was just one word: waiting. She still hadn't said a word publicly. No press release, no social media post, not even a note to her colleagues. But she was watching. Online, people weren't just defending her, they were dissecting the entire broadcast like it was part of a court record. One TikTok user slowed Karoline's reaction frame by frame, calling it the moment someone realizes the truth just drowned out the spin. Audiences were hooked. By late morning, even conservatives were shifting. Senator Glenn Royden of Indiana tweeted, "Whether you agree with Representative Crockett or not, using police to intimidate a sitting member of Congress is a dangerous precedent." The tweet crossed 100,000 likes in just a couple of hours. Karoline, meanwhile, went on a conservative podcast to double down. This wasn't about facts, she insisted. It was about intent. She tried to smear the president by stitching together threads that distort the truth. The host nodded along. Well, you know how they do. But Jasmine's silence was louder than anything Karoline could say. By noon, reporters were already swarming outside Jasmine's Capitol Hill office. She walked past them, ignoring the shouted questions. Inside, Noel handed her a folder. Preliminary legal memo. They're recommending we go on offense. Jasmine nodded without speaking. She moved to the window, gazing out at the crowd. Her expression unreadable. She thought I'd fold, she finally said. Cry, panic, backpedal. Noel watched her carefully. But you're not going to. She turned to him with a knowing look. I'm from South Dallas. I've been through worse than a media storm or a scared white woman calling 911. If Karoline thought this would blow over, she was about to learn otherwise. By the next morning, the story had taken on a life of its own. Outside Jasmine's office, the sidewalk was packed with cameras, boom mics, and eager reporters. This wasn't just another DC drama, had teeth. Karoline's on-air call to Capitol Police had set off something far bigger than a political scuffle. Inside the building, Jasmine was in a private strategy meeting with her legal team and 3 senior advisors, including a sleep-deprived Noel. Saad Milton, her legal counsel and friend from Howard Law, flipped through documents. Walk me through exactly what you said on, what you held up. Jasmine pointed to each item. That's the 2021 FOIA disclosure. This is from the congressional record. That one came from a public oversight hearing. And this, she said, holding up a printed sheet, was pulled directly from the Office of Government Ethics website. Saad reviewed the list. So everything's clean. Every word, Jasmine said. Good, Noel added. It's because Capitol Police still haven't clarified that you're not under investigation. Jasmine shook her head. They're not stalling. They're waiting to see where the politics land. And those political winds were shifting fast. By midday, the media had reframed the entire debate. It wasn't about classified material anymore. It was about overreach. A sitting member of Congress was being reported to police for reading public documents. The irony practically sold itself. Then, an unexpected voice entered the discussion. Congressman Will Granger of Kansas, a soft-spoken Republican known for avoiding the spotlight. On NPR, he said, "Look, I don't agree with Representative Crockett on much, but calling the police because someone read from public records? That's not democracy. That's a distraction. The quote blew up not because it was fiery, but because it was reasonable. But because it came from someone seen as neutral, Jasmine, meanwhile, remained publicly silent. But behind closed doors, her mind was racing. "We can't just play defense," she said in her office. "We need to show this isn't new this." Tactic of using fear to silence truth-tellers has been around for decades. Saad looked up. "You want to go broader? I want to go deeper." This wasn't just about Karoline anymore. Jasmine was thinking about everyone who'd ever been told they were too loud, too emotional, too ambitious right when they started speaking hard truths. While Jasmine was preparing her next move, Karoline was unraveling. Her second public statement that afternoon lacked the polish of her first. She insisted she was just following protocol, that her call to the police was out of an abundance of caution. But no one was buying it. Under pressure, the Capitol Police issued a short statement. No criminal investigation had been launched against Representative Crockett. The wording was vague, but the message was clear: they weren't touching it. Still, the media storm kept building. Then came the moment that changed everything. Retired intelligence officer Colonel Richard Ames appeared on a CBS panel and said, "Nothing Representative Crockett shared was classified. If anything, more Americans should know this information. What concerns me is that someone tried to criminalize transparency." That single clip racked up over 4 million views in 6 hours back in Jasmine's office. The mood shifted. Staffers who'd been anxious the night before now felt a wave of confidence. Support calls poured in from across the country, even from independents and moderate. "Conservatives, I don't always agree with her," one message said, "but she was right this time." Noah leaned against Jasmine's doorway, arms folded. "If she hadn't tried to shut you up, this never would have gone national." Jasmine didn't look up from her notes, which tells you exactly what they're afraid of. She paused. "Let's draft the statement." They worked late into the night writing, editing, refining. Every word was measured, not angry. Theatrical, just clear, just firm. She wouldn't scream. She wouldn't perform. She'd explain with precision, with facts, and with just enough steel to make people listen. But before her statement went live, Jasmine made a quiet move that would shift the story entirely. She called Amari Denson, an investigative journalist from Columbus, Ohio. They'd first met at a panel on institutional accountability years earlier and stayed in touch. Jasmine knew Amari didn't chase headlines, she chased truth. "Amari," Jasmine said, her voice steady, "I have something you need to see." An hour later, Amari was sitting cross-legged on the floor of Jasmine's office, a legal pad in her lap, her laptop open. The documents Jasmine had cited during the broadcast were spread out between them dog-eared, highlighted, flagged. Amari flipped through them carefully, tracing her finger over dates and annotations. For a long time, she said nothing. Finally, she looked up. "You shared all of this live. Every word." Amari shook her head slowly. "And this is what she reported as a threat to national security." Jasmine gave a small, dry smile. Apparently, transparency is dangerous again. Amari tapped her pen on her knee. "I'm going to walk through the whole timeline, what you said. Where it came from, who tried to bury it, and who benefited." "That's why I called you," Jasmine said. "This isn't about me. It's about what they don't want people paying attention to." The article wasn't flashy. It wasn't viral on purpose. It was methodical, heavily sourced, and packed, with receipts within 24 hours. It went live under the headline, "The Broadcast Breakdown." What Jasmine Crockett actually said it was over 3,000 words long. It listed every document, every source, and exactly where the public could access them. No opinions, just accountability. The internet lit up. One person tweeted, "This article should be required reading in every civics class." Another wrote, Karoline made the worst mistake you can make. She called the cops on the wrong woman with the right facts. Even educators began sharing it. A government teacher in Flagstaff posted a video of her classroom reading through the article line by line. Karoline's team scrambled. They hadn't expected Jasmine to hold back or let her work speak first. They definitely hadn't planned for a nonpartisan journalist to break the scandal wide open with surgical accuracy. That afternoon, Jasmine's office released her official statement. It was less than 2 pages. No shouting, no finger pointing, just clarity. I read from documents available to every American citizen, it began. I did not leak anything. I reminded the public of what they have a right to know. And then came the closing paragraph, the line that landed harder than anything Karoline had said since the moment it all started. When women like me, black women, outspoken women, are punished for speaking truth with facts, the question isn't whether we crossed a line. It's why the truth made them so uncomfortable in the first place. Raise our voices, and too often we're met not with facts, but with fear. But facts don't flinch. They don't bend. They don't vanish just because someone calls the police. By evening, pressure was mounting on Karoline from every direction. Even outlets that typically framed her in a favorable light started shifting tone. One conservative blogger admitted, I don't agree with Crockett on much, but the documents check out. If this was a power move, it backfired. Fox News aired a segment questioning whether Karoline had overreached and inadvertently made Jasmine into a martyr. But Jasmine wasn't interested in martyrdom. Alone in her apartment that night, she told Noel, they're already trying to turn this into identity politics. Like I'm just another angry black woman who got lucky with a soundbite. You're not, Noel replied. I know, but I didn't come here to be a character, Jasmine said quietly. I came to keep receipts. Outside, the political machine churned on fast, ruthless, unpredictable. But Jasmine's refusal to take the bait gave people pause. She had handed them something they couldn't dismiss with a headline or twist with a hashtag, while public opinion began shifting. The White House was under growing strain. Inside the West Wing, phones rang nonstop. By Saturday, President Trump's communications team had locked themselves in a secure, phone-free room. What began as a viral clip had become a national problem, not just because Jasmine had quoted uncomfortable truths on air, but because she'd done it calmly, methodically. It was getting under their skin in a way outrage never could. She never raised her voice. One aide muttered, scrolling through clips. She just read it all off like she was giving a weather report, said another. That's what makes it dangerous, a third added. She made it sound normal. Across the hall, staff reviewed polling. Jasmine's national favorability had jumped 12 points, especially among independents and voters aged 35 to 60. They were supposed to shy away from leftist disruption. But Jasmine hadn't looked disruptive. She'd looked prepared, steady. Worse, credible. Back in D.C., Jasmine was inundated with interview requests, say BC, NBC, PBS, even 60 Minutes. She declined all of them. Instead, she scheduled town halls. Real conversations, no scripts. That weekend, she flew to Toledo, standing in a packed gym, holding a mic in jeans and a navy blazer. She listened as a woman in the back stood up. I'm not political, she said. I didn't vote for you, but I watched that broadcast. Why are they so scared of people reading documents? Jasmine paused. I think it's because if we all start reading what's already out there, she said, we'll stop believing the people who tell us it's too complicated to understand. That quote went viral again. Noel, watching from D.C., texted, we need that on a banner. Meanwhile, Karoline was unraveling. On a conservative radio show, she doubled down, insisting Jasmine had pieced together misleading information to damage the president. But backlash was swelling even inside her own party. Two House Republicans broke ranks publicly, calling the Capitol Police report a bad look. In political language, that was abandonment. Inside Jasmine's office, the mood had shifted. Staffers half-joked about the Crockett effect. Even the legal team cracked wise. We should start charging for FOJA workshops. But Jasmine stayed focused. Said late Sunday night, reviewing her schedule. They haven't answered yet. You think Trump's going to say something? Noel asked. He'll wait until someone tells him what to say, but eventually, yeah. And he did. Monday morning, from the Resolute desk, Trump stared into the camera for an unannounced press briefing. We've seen a lot of dishonest people lately, he began. Some in Congress are trying to create division by pretending to know more than they do. It's dangerous. It's partisan. And it's very sad. He never said Jasmine's name. He didn't need to. The internet noticed. A side-by-side clip went viral. Jasmine calmly holding up a public memo. Trump waving off dishonest people. Viewers made their own judgments. Many didn't like what they saw. Even conservative columnist Peter Lang weighed in. When truth makes you nervous, maybe you're the problem. In her office, Jasmine saw the alert flash on her phone. She glanced at it, then looked up at her team. He's testing me, she said. What are you going to do? Saad asked. Jasmine stood. I'm going to answer. But on my terms. It landed harder than anyone on that stage could have predicted. Oh, no banners, no dramatic intro music, just a bare podium. A single mic, folding chairs, and a small black sign. Representative Jasmine Crockett, statement to the press. The venue wasn't symbolic, it was practical. A modest civic center in Bethesda, Maryland. Just far enough from D.C. to escape the chaos of Capitol Hill, yet close enough for every major outlet to send a crew. And they did. Reporters packed the seats. Others lined the walls. Not just the usual political correspondents, student journalists, podcasters, and indie reporters had shown up too. All hoping to catch something raw, something real. Jasmine entered without a team. Noel and Saad stood quietly in the back. They had helped her prep, but she wasn't carrying notes. She didn't need them. She approached the mic, took a breath, and looked across the room. I won't be long, she began, but I will be clear. Silence followed. What happened last week wasn't just an overreaction, she said. It wasn't just a political stunt. It was something more dangerous. A public attempt to turn truth into a threat. She paused, letting the weight of the words settle. I was invited to speak on a panel about transparency. I did exactly that. I cited public documents, ones every American has access to, because I still believe sunlight is the best disinfectant. No teleprompters, no dramatics. Just her voice, measured, firm. But some people don't like hearing the truth. Out loud, she continued. Not because they don't believe it, but because they do. And they'd rather you didn't. Some reporters nodded. The worst part, she said, it wasn't the accusations. It was how fast someone called the police to silence a colleague. Think about that. A sitting congresswoman called law enforcement not because I lied. Not because I threatened anyone, but because the truth was inconvenient. Camera shutters clicked in sync. I don't care if you agree with my politics. This isn't about that. This is about whether we let fear and power dictate what's acceptable to say. If I can't quote a document you paid for, then what does that say about our democracy? She leaned slightly into the mic, her voice now unshakably steady. I'm not going to apologize. I'm not going to walk it back. And I'm certainly not going to let anyone rewrite the rules just because they don't like how the facts feel. Ellen. Came the line that would echo across headlines, screens, and comment sections. If speaking the truth scares you enough to call the cops, maybe you're the one who should be under investigation. A sharp intake of breath rippled through the room. Cameras zoomed. In the back, Sade closed her eyes for a beat. Noelle whispered, "That's the one." Jasmine kept going. "I've been called loud. I've been called angry. I've been called every coded word in the book. But what I've never been on, never will be is silent. No shouting, no theatrics. Just clarity. I'm not here for political theater. I'm here for accountability. And if dragging my name through the mud is supposed to scare me, then you haven't been paying attention." She stepped back. No Q&A, no follow-ups. Just a quiet nod of her head and an exit through the side door. The video hit YouTube in minutes. News outlets clipped the speech before she even reached her car. By nightfall, the think pieces were multiplying. The power of silence broken. From citation to confrontation. How Crockett's calm sparked a political earthquake. But Jasmine didn't go home. She and Noelle drove straight to a late-night meeting with two progressive colleagues. No tour, no rally, no merch drops. She was building something quieter, smarter, harder to erase. Meanwhile, the White House was already moving. This time, they weren't being subtle. It began with a 6 a.m. press release from the communications office, maintaining national unity in the face of political disinformation. Jasmine's name wasn't in it, but the target was unmistakable. The statement accused certain members of Congress of misusing public platforms to mischaracterize executive processes and undermine national security narratives for personal or partisan gain. That phrase, national security narratives, set off alarms across D.C. Jasmine read the release in her inbox. On her way to a breakfast meeting, she didn't flinch. In Silver Spring, surrounded by a group of education reform advocates, Jasmine read the memo once, then again. Noelle, walking beside her, scrolled silently before letting out a breath. Up, they're not backing off. They can't, she replied. They've already invested in the lie. Now they have to sell it. By mid-morning, right-leaning news outlets had picked up the story. Pundits labeled Jasmine reckless, obsessed with optics, even dangerous. One anchor on a political morning show went further. We are witnessing the weaponization of transparency. This isn't courageous sabotage disguised as virtue. But this time, the backlash wasn't one-sided. Mainstream journalists began asking questions the administration couldn't answer. What exactly had Crockett done wrong? What information had been distorted? Where was the threat? No clear answers came. Then, at around 1 p.m., a leak changed everything. A source from the White House counsel's office handed an internal memo to the Philadelphia Record, a modest regional paper not known for national scoops. The memo, dated 2 days after Jasmine's press conference, was short but damning. It admitted that none of the material she referenced had violated classification rules. One line stood out. The greater concern is the pattern of narrative building through legally accessible documentation, which poses a reputational threat to the executive branch if left unchecked. There was no confession of wrongdoing, just an admission of motive. That was enough. The White House's press release suddenly looked hollow. Jasmine's critics began to look more defensive than principled. That evening, Jasmine's team gathered in her office. The story was everywhere now. Saad held the memo in one hand and a glass of water in the other. Even their lawyers know you didn't break a single rule, she said. Noelle nodded. And now everyone else does too. Jasmine sat at the table, hands folded. She wasn't smiling. They're not done, she said. They don't lose quietly. You want to stay ahead of this? Noelle asked. She gave a single nod. I want them to know that every time they come for me, they'll walk away with fewer lies intact than before. That night, she posted a rare video on her personal social media no team. No editing, just Jasmine standing in front of her bookshelf, recording on her phone. "I've said what I needed to say on stage," she began. "But now, I want to talk." To regular folks who are watching this and wondering what the hell is going on, I didn't commit a crime. I didn't leak anything. I told the truth. I used public records you could have looked up yourself, and the fact that it caused this much panic. That tells me we've gotten way too comfortable letting people lie to our faces. Just because they sound confident while doing it. You don't need permission to read what already belongs to you. Don't let anyone scare you out of learning. The video was under 2 minutes long. By morning, it had over 2 million views. Meanwhile, Karoline Leavitt's team had gone quiet. Her social media slowed. The only official response was a single tweet. "We stand by our concern for public safety." No elaboration, no press. No apology, but inside her team, cracks were forming. One anonymous staffer told a reporter they hadn't expected this level of blowback. They were starting to worry it would stick, and it did, by the end of the week. Even some Trump-aligned members of Congress were advising their aides to steer clear. One conservative senator's aide was caught on a hot mic, saying, "If the White House is looking for a distraction, they picked the wrong opponent." The public wasn't just watching, they were responding. It started with voicemails. Jasmine's office inbox flooded every hour. Teachers, nurses, veterans, grocery clerks, grad students. Most said the same thing. "I've never followed politics like this, but I saw what they didn't. I'm not okay with it." Some callers were tearful, others angry. A few sounded nervous, surprised they were even calling a member of Congress. But they weren't calling about policy. They were calling about principle, and it didn't stop there. Within a day, Jasmine's team had to hire 2 new interns just to help sort the flood of emails. Thousands of messages poured in from rural counties and urban neighborhoods, red states and blue. Some were just a sentence. "I don't agree with you on much, but on this you were right." Others were long, detailed stories from every day. People who, for the first time in a long time, felt like someone had told the truth out loud. One message came from a woman in Cheyenne, Wyoming. She hadn't voted since 2008, but she was planning to register again, just to support people who don't flinch when the heat comes. Jasmine read the note aloud to Noel. She doesn't even like me, Jasmine said with a small smile. But she respects that I didn't fold. Noel looked up from his phone. Check this out. It was a video from a Missouri town hall. A Republican voter had stood up and said, "I didn't vote for Crockett. Hell, I didn't even know who she was until last week." But if y'all think reading a memo is a crime, maybe the problem isn't her. The crowd clapped, not a roar, but solid, steady, real. The shift was quiet, but undeniable. And it wasn't driven by pundits or political strategists. It came from ordinary people who were tired of being lied to. Tired of being told they couldn't handle the truth. Tired of leaders hiding behind jargon while punishing anyone who dared to simply read the fine print. A retired postal worker from Erie sent in a handwritten note. She reminded me of Barbara Jordan. Not loud, just smart, just steady, just not afraid. Jasmine kept that one on her desk. Then came the rally. It wasn't organized by any campaign. It started in a Facebook group created by college students in Arlington and grew from there. By Saturday, more than 3,000 people gathered outside the same studio where Jasmine had spoken the week before. They held signs that read, "Truth isn't a crime. Facts over fear. Reading isn't treason." Some carried printouts of the very documents Jasmine had, cited downloaded straight from official government's websites. One woman even laminated hers and wore it around her neck like a badge. Jasmine didn't attend. She didn't want it to be about her, but she watched the live stream. So did the White House. One aide reportedly warned senior officials, "We're losing the narrative. Jasmine's becoming a symbol for something bigger. And we can't control it. Back in her office, Jasmine remained focused. She met with ethics watchdogs to discuss new legislation bills that would make public records more accessible and harder to hide. The timing was no accident. She was using the attention to shine light into corners most people had been trained to ignore it. At the same time, whispers of congressional hearings began circling not against Jasmine, but against the misuse of law enforcement for political retaliation. Lawmakers from both parties were now pushing for an investigation into Karoline Leavitt's phone call, how it was made, who was involved, and whether it crossed ethical lines. Karoline stayed silent. No new statements, no press appearances. Even right-wing media began to quietly pivot away. Her name no longer drove engagement like it had a week earlier. Jasmine, meanwhile, kept working. No victory tour, no headlines. Just motion. Late one evening, she stood by her office window, watching the warm haze of late summer settle over the city. "You think this moment will last?" she asked Noel. He shrugged. "Maybe not. But the people watching won't forget." She turned to face him. "Good. Because the next time someone like me speaks up, I want them to remember this." But there was still one more choice to make. One more move that would define the chapter ahead. Capitol Hill was quiet that Monday morning. Summer was dragging into September, and while D.C. never fully stopped, the mood had shifted. You could feel it in the small talk, the way staffers moved through the halls. Jasmine Crockett wasn't just a name anymore. She was a story people were watching in real time. Behind closed doors, members of her own party floated ideas. Maybe she should form a committee. Maybe she should launch a full media offensive. Maybe she should make it about Karoline force an ethics hearing. Lean into the attention. But Jasmine didn't want a spectacle. She wanted solutions. That morning, as press crews waited outside, and her staff buzzed about talking points, Jasmine gathered her team. Noel, Sadi, junior staffers, interns, everyone crowded into her office. She stood in front of them, a legal pad in one hand and a pen in the other. "Here's what we're going to do," she said. "We're not going to waste this moment turning it into theater. We're going to use it to make sure no one else goes through what I just did for simply doing their job." She flipped her notepad and wrote 3 bullet points on the whiteboard. New legislation to protect whistleblowers and strengthen document transparency. Rules prohibiting police powers from being used between members of Congress. A permanent online archive of every public record cited on air. This isn't about clapping back, she told them. It's about making sure truth doesn't have to rely on courage to survive. The room nodded, not in applause, but in agreement. They were tired too. Tired of noise. Tired of distractions. Outside, reporters waited under the late afternoon sun, expecting another headline-making statement. Jasmine stepped out, calm as ever. The cameras clicked into position. Microphones stretched toward her. Lenses locked in. She offered a quiet smile. "No big speech today," she said. "Just wanted to let you know we've drafted a bill." There was a pause. Reporters glanced at each other. One asked, "A bill for what?" "To make sure what happened last week," Jasmine replied, "doesn't happen again." Another voice called out, "Are you pressing charges against Congresswoman Leavitt?" Jasmine didn't flinch. "No," she said evenly. "I'm doing what she should have done in the first place. My job." And with that, she turned and walked back inside. No theatrics. No slogans. Just action. And that's what people were craving, something real. The response came quickly. Advocacy groups applauded. Journalists called it substantive. Even a few Republican voices quietly admitted the bill was worth discussing. Online, the shift was just as clear. One user tweeted, "She didn't Just drop receipts. She turned them into reform. Another wrote, finally, someone who turns heat into work instead of viral outrage. Her approval ratings rose, but something deeper had shifted: public expectation. In a time where outrage was currency and spin was sport, Jasmine didn't take the bait. She didn't shout. She didn't play victim. She stood still and let the truth speak for itself, and this time, the country listened. Later that week, she visited a high school in Fort Wayne, Indiana. No cameras. Just another quiet stop in a string of many. During a student Q&A, one girl raised her hand. "Do you stay calm," she asked, "when people lie about you?" Jasmine looked her in the eyes. "Because the truth has never needed permission to be true," she said gently, "and it never will." As they left the school, Noelle turned to her. "You think this will stick? What happened?" She nodded. "Maybe not all of it. But they'll remember how it felt to watch someone tell the truth and not fold." She paused at the curb, then added, "And if that feeling sticks even a little, maybe next time, people will expect more from the ones who represent them." There were no cameras, no chance. Just the sun dipping low over a quiet street. A woman standing exactly where she'd always stood, still, focused, unmoved. Because sometimes the loudest answer is the one that doesn't flinch. When truth becomes inconvenient, some will try to twist it, hide it, or punish those who speak. It bunts when someone stands firm in it with quiet conviction and undeniable proof, shifts the balance of power. Jasmine Crockett didn't just withstand a political attack. She turned it into something lasting. If this story meant something to you, share it. Talk about it. Ask more of the people who lead. Don't just watch from the sidelines. Show up, speak up, and let truth be the last word.